Father, dear Jesus, Holy Spirit, Lord, we thank you for being here with us. Jesus, I ask that you may just let me forget everything that is not of you, Lord, and that I may just speak your truth and speak whatever it is that you desire to share with us today during this talk. We pray in thanksgiving for your call for us all to be here and for our opportunity to abide in you. We love you, Lord. All glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen. Our Lady of Guadalupe,
Pray for us.
Hello, guys. So, as you can see from my handy-dandy PowerPoint, my name is Valeria Sierralta, and I am your campus minister. I'm the new kid on the block, so I'm excited to be here. So great. My talk is titled, this is so weird to use a microphone and not sing. But I'll see how it works to speak with him. Great. So the title of my talk is The Art of Abiding. And I know a couple of you guys asked me like what the heck that was. But we're going to go right into it. So, would you be our... Thank you. So I want to talk about how it's midterm season. And as you can see, I think this is how everyone is feeling right now. It's the vibes I'm getting. I think the butterflies and the excitement of the new year have kind of gone away, and now we're just really stressed. There's a lot going on. Everyone's very, there's a lot on our shoulders. So yes, just wanted to point that out, that I'm grateful the Lord called this talk to happen during midterm season, because hopefully it'll bring us some inspiration. So I want to talk about the difference between striving and abiding. Striving, the definition for it is to struggle in opposition, while abiding is to be rooted, to remain, to dwell, and just to be. Now, I want to explain, striving is great. We should be striving. We need to be striving to be saints because we are countercultural. So we are fighting in opposition in order to be saints. But during this talk specifically, I wanted to talk about the beauty of abiding. The beauty of just abiding and being with the Lord, especially during tough times such as now. Oh. Is it the arrow? Okay. So, in my attempt to explain what abiding means, because I think it's still a lot for us to learn. Let's see if this works. I think this is what abiding means. When I think about abiding in the Lord and in His love, like that is just goals. I used to say that my spirit animal, I think I told a couple of you guys on the beach, was that I used to say my spirit animal is the beached whale because I thought that meant it was just a whale on the beach. And very recently, after all these years, someone explained to me that it means dead whale. So I'm changing my spirit animal into this one. Whatever he is. So anyway, I want to start off the talk by asking, why are you in college? Because this is usually where the stress is coming from, right? So just a couple of words, just throw it out. Why are you in college? I heard, wow.
The pursuit of higher education.
All right. What else? Why else are you in college? The norm. Okay. It's the thing we do. Anyone else?
To get a job.
To get a job. Great. These are all great responses. Thank you, class. Next up. Yes, those are all right, but I think in the midst of this crazy college life that we don't really know why we're here sometimes, but hey, you're here, and we're glad you're here. So, in the midst of all of that, I want to go back to Scripture. As my man Juan says, abide in me as God says that, you know what I mean. Abide in me as I abide in you, just as the branch cannot bear fruit by itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. Those who abide in me and I in them bear much fruit, because apart from me, you can do nothing. Dun, dun, dun. Now, at least when I first read it, I'm like, dang! Like, it seems very, like, you can do nothing. Very intense. But I think there's so much freedom in it. There's so much freedom in that dependency in God. Because, man, like, if I were God, I would be such a horrible God. All the decisions that I would choose would be horrible. So I think I find much freedom in the fact that apart from him, I am nothing. But who likes dependency? Have you found it difficult to ask for help? Or to tell someone when you're struggling? Are you very proud that you're independent? Yes, queen. Same. And it's something that I'm still battling because I am human. But it is something I think the theme of this year for me is definitely fighting that. And fighting that perfectionism so that I can be my spirit animal at all times. But I want to go back to why. Why we've bought into this lie that we always have to do, and that everything is on us, and that if we don't do it all, then it's not going to happen. Because I think we all believe that, especially in this culture. So just to go back in time, I'm going to take you down memory lane. So this is my daddy. His name is Sierralta. In English, they call him Karen. His name is not Karen. So just to go back down memory, I've never shared that with anyone. So just to go back down memory lane, my father is this free spirit. As you can see from the beginning, with my little gut, we were rocking out the bathing suit. And this was very recently. I was surfing and he was stand-up paddling. So as you can see, my father is very much a free spirit. And I just want to go back to where I learned these lies, and usually that's your childhood. Not to go all counselor, but I wanted to explore where it all came from and why I believe the things that I believe in. So I realized that my father is such a free spirit. He was a surfer growing up, and he actually made it his career. He is now, the president of ILAS, and the vice president of ISA, the International Surfing Association. So he travels and puts on surfing competitions, and people made fun of him all growing up because he wanted to be a surfer. But he actually made it his career. So there's pros and cons. He did it a little too much at times, surf too much. He played a lot. But there's also that free spirit of hey, follow your dreams and they can actually come true. Now, the other part of me is Mrs. Jenny Little, who apparently is here today. So this is Jay Lit, and Jay Lit has never heard me speak, so I'm excited that you came. So this is Jay Lit, Jenny Little. As you can see, she is a queen. And that little boy in her arms is actually me. But anyway, as you can see from the way that my sister and I are dressed, my mom is very type A. She is very organized. She worked at a bank. She has it all together. She's a mom. Aren't all moms just amazing? So, except for my haircut. But, so I just started to realize that these were the two opposing worldviews that I had. There's my dad, and that's actually him, and his craziness and his goofiness and just floating around the world. And then there's my mom that's very focused on her American dream and on her family. So growing up, I had these, or still currently, I have these opposing views always in my heart. I want to be a doer, but I also want to dwell and play and hang out. That's always my conflict, which is probably why I'm also a procrastinator. But I wanted to explain my worldviews a little bit so that you have an idea of where my thoughts started to happen. So in all of this, my parents actually did decide to get a divorce when I was 4. And I think through that different shift in family and worldview, I took it upon myself to be the peacemaker. So there's one side and there's another side, and then it's me. and it's usually that way in all settings. So trying to find like the joy in things, like making sure everything's okay, like we're okay, like we're good. So I think also I tend to be extra positive. So like positive to a flaw, where sometimes it's hard for me to identify when something's actually wrong. Because I'm like, things are great, what do you mean? So yeah, that's important to note, because that led me and has been like the root of why I seek perfection. You know, like if I can control everything, then we're good. So that's why I started to do all the things all the time growing up. Kind of. And I became, busy became my norm. Yeah, let's just meditate on this a little bit. Busy just became my norm, and it's until very recently that I realized that was so distorted. That like if my agenda wasn't packed, I'm like, what's wrong? Like I'm not doing enough. Like I saw so much of my identity in being busy, because I'm like, well, I'm important. You know, it's pride too. It's like I'm important. I have things to do. I have places to go. I have people to see. I am someone. So I definitely fell into this busy culture. Wait, did we ever go to? Hello. Okay. All right, we're just gonna go back to the cat. We're missing one, but I just wanted to explain how that affected all aspects of my life. I desired to do all things all the time, and I was just so extra. I was more extra than guac. Like I was like in high school doing all the things. I was in the end like, I think I was in 7 honor societies, and I was like the president of a couple student orgs, and I was singing, and I was doing all the things, and then that translated into college too. Like it's a continual thing, and I'm just now reflecting on, I'm like, wow, I did a lot, and like that's not in a prideful way. Like that was bad for me to like do so much. And in college, I was here in this beautiful place, and I had 3 part-time jobs, and I was just always involved in everything. Again, I like a lot of things, so sometimes it's hard to balance that. Like I want to do all the things, but also I did see my identity in it. And in the end, it affected my American dream. So, as you guys know, I'm an immigrant, moved to the U.S. In 2002. So I realized that being an immigrant, you're always taught that the goal is the job. And that's something that we just actually acknowledged also. In college, you're told you go to college because you're supposed to get a job, right? You go to elementary school so that you can go to middle school. You go to middle school so that you can go to high school. You go to high school so that you can go to college. And after college, you get a job, and then your life is set, right? Like that's the goal. So I finally had my goal. I graduated, double majoring, because why not? Because that's just my flaw. And I'm indecisive, anyway. But yeah, I graduated. I joined Focus for 2 beautiful years in Philly at Temple University. And then I started working at the World Bank. So this was my corporate life. Doesn't it look beautiful? It was not. Dang, I'm not even looking at my notes. Bueno. So, in terms of my American dream, I was just always taught to work hard. And sometimes, like, actually as an immigrant, you have to work harder. And you have to prove yourself, and that's the lie that I was believing. Like, I always had to prove myself. So once I finally got the job at the World Bank after many, many interviews, and a long, long summer, I felt accomplished. Like I did the things, like it was all worth it, and now I get to live out my dream and start a family and go to heaven. And it was beautiful. Something I did, I will always take from the World Bank as their mission. In applying for colleges, you guys are you have a missionary heart. That's why you're here on a Thursday. But I knew I wanted to serve, and there's very few organizations that like truly cared about people. In all my interviews, I was like, and they would always tell me, like, there's something different about you. So I still had that, like, joy within me. And it wasn't me, you know, it was the one I was in love with. It was the Lord that they would see whenever I would have interviews. I wasn't even scared in interviews. I was excited that I got to share, because I would put Focus on there. And I had to share my previous work experience. So I had to evangelize, which was awesome. And, you know, I worked here. I was a student campus minister here, 2K16. Back in dinosaur years. So it was always exciting to go into job interviews and to be able to be like, yeah, this is what I did. And they're like, so can you tell me a little bit about your mission work? And I was like, sure. But anyway, so I was so excited that I finally found an organization that actually hired me because of my mission work experience. They're like, you actually want to serve people. That's what we're here to do too. Like, come on board. And I was so happy. Growing up, I always dreamed of like being in my little high heels and like a little briefcase and like walking in the city into this big building. That was always like my vision for the American dream. I'm like, once I'm there, I'm set. I can finally rest. And I finally had that. The World Bank was amazing. These are my coworkers. I actually missed them. This is Emil. She's from Indonesia. And Cynthia is from Ivory Coast. Your Peruvian potato. And then Vicky is from Ghana. So one of my 5 loves, as JP2 says, is culture. So actually, from walking from the elevator to my desk, I would hear 4 different languages. Like, it was so cool that I was the minority for speaking 2. Like, everyone spoke at least 5. Everyone graduated from Ivy League schools. Like, I was definitely a fly on the wall, just like never understanding what they were actually talking about in the meetings, but like taking notes and stuff. Acting like I was, So, I was living my dream for a good 2 months. Super happy, driving into the city in DC and going to school. I started my graduate degrees in counseling. So very, very excited at first. Everything was new. I was super pumped to be a missionary in the corporate world. And then it just all hit me. I realized that I was very unhappy and it was hard to figure out why. It started getting colder too, and like kind of like it is now. Not really, but like darker sooner and like colder in the evenings. I would have to wake up at 5 a.m. to drive to DC. My commute was about 3 hours a day because I would drive to and from DC, but I also had to go to class. So my whole schedule was out of whack. I would open my eyes at 5 a.m. and feel like the world was sleeping, and here I am like waking up, which is very lonely. I didn't have a team praying with me like I did for 2 years. I didn't have this community that literally you walk in and you get to hang out with friends. Like when you leave this community, you actually have to like find a time to meet, which is really hard to do. So I missed that. I missed that spontaneity, that like, hey, how are you? Like, I couldn't remember the last time someone actually asked me like how it was, and I would walk into work and be like, dang, like nobody knows my heart, like nobody here knows me, and I would try to invest. So I definitely had beautiful conversations with people, and they tried to like dust off my ashes during Ash Wednesday, and I got to explain to not do that, please. But so like it was great to be a witness in the corporate world. But it took me a couple months to realize how my soul was just hurting. I tried to maintain a prayer life. And then I realized I could stop practicing my faith and nobody would notice. And that was such a big moment for me. Of course, people would notice eventually because I wasn't myself anymore. I was irritable. I was annoyed all the time. I was critical of others, which I never experienced before. And then I realized it was because I was being self-critical. Like, I was analyzing and being so hard on myself that I was reflecting. It's called transference. I was, like, transferring that to other people, And I'm like, why am I in such a rut? And it was because of my faith. I had to really fight for my faith. Since I woke up at the crack of dawn, I couldn't go to morning mass a lot of the time, and I couldn't go to evening mass because I had class in the evenings. So I had this longing for the Lord. I'm like, like, I just want to be with you. I would pass by a Catholic church and just cry. Or I would, like, park and just go inside and be like, I miss you. And then people were like, have you thought about discerning religious life? I'm like, yes. I did. And we'll continue to if he opens the door again. But yeah, I just longed for the Lord so badly. And I felt like I couldn't have him. And that was super hard. Super, super hard. And then I also started to realize that I wasn't the only one suffering, that my coworkers were too. They were very, very successful people, but many of them didn't have families. They worked so hard that they never got married or never joined religious life. Many options. But I just wondered, I'm like, yes, we're making good money, but like, where are you going after the day ends? Like, do you go home to an empty house? And like, that just started getting to me. Like, I started feeling their pain. And it was super sad to see like such successful people, and literally why we come to college, like to be those people, and to see that they weren't happy. And that was like a big wake-up call, and I started having identity crisis, and I am super dramatic, but I started like calculating how many years I was spending driving every day, and like, oh my gosh, my life, and I was a mess. But Jesus is what got me through it all. I had this huge longing for him, and I finally found a spiritual director. Does anyone have a spiritual director? Yes!
Queen.
Yes, queen. So needed. My spiritual director is pretty savage, and I love him because he tells me it like it is. Like, he doesn't hold back, and I am very like, love me. But when it comes to like supervision, Father, just so you know, when it comes to supervision or like spiritual director, like whatever it is, I just love when you can tell they're loving you through their gaze, but they're also like, hey, like you're kind of a mess. And I'm like, yes, like tell me because I won't notice, so thank you. So I like take it really well, take that criticism well. And my spiritual director just kind of smacked me, hypothetically. And he was telling me like, okay, so you're going to school full time and you're working full time? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, why? And I'm like, because I have to. He's like, why? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know why I thought that was the only option for me, to just do all the things all the time, but that's been my pattern. So it was hard for me to even get outside of that. And he was really funny, and he told me, how ironic would it be if you lost your mind pursuing counseling? The man speaks truth. I was like, yeah, you're not wrong. He helped me realize that I was buying into the lie that I was supposed to suffer. Have you guys bought into the lie that you're just going to struggle all 4 years of college? That you're just always going to be busy, that you're always going to be burnt out, and that's the way things are supposed to be? Lies. I bought into that lie too, and after speaking with him, like my world was shattered, and I felt like I was finally looking up. It was so funny. Like, I finally noticed the sky when I walked out of there, through my tears, of course. I'm always a crier. I felt like he woke me up and reminded me that I had been buying into this busy culture for way too long to survive any longer. And I had hit rock bottom. Like, that's one of the most painful times of my life was trying to do all the things in the corporate world. So he was really, really cool, and I actually got to take that into the classroom at my counseling class. I remember I went, and one of my classmates says that. She's like, yeah, I feel like I'm just gonna have to like suck it up. Like, I go to school and I go to work and I have family stuff going on, I have my boyfriend, and like, it's just how it's gonna be for 3 years. And I just remember like raising my hand and being like, why? And everyone was like, and I always have to like choose wisely, like when I tried to like evangelize, so I wasn't sure if it was the right time, and I was like, whatever, I just gave her spiritual direction, and I learned this thing, and they're all like, but it was true. I even got to speak truth into her soul, because she thought she was just gonna have to suffer for a couple of years, and I was like, why? And like, why do we think that right now? Why does that have to be our norm? Because that's not the way that things were created to be. I wanted to ask you guys if you saw the night sky yesterday, or if you knew what the sky looked like today, or when was the last time that you saw a sunset, or a little ladybug on a leaf. But in general, we get so into ourselves and into our to-do list that like we don't even look up. And this is literally like God's painting. Every single day the sun rises and the sun goes down, and we don't even look at it. We're like, that's cool, God, but like I have so much to do. I can't look at this right now. You know? And it's like, it's so sad, but it actually happens in the city too. I specifically tried to find like DC sunsets. There's one at George Mason too. I mean, there's the sun at anyway. You can find the sun here. Like, just because we're in this city doesn't mean we shouldn't see the sun. You know, that's so yes. Video, please. we're back there.
About 6 years ago, I arrived home from work and my 5-year-old son was already holding up a baseball. We can play, but I don't have a lot of time.
We need you to intercede, girl. Oh, thanks. Do you know what it is?
Hey! Jesus and Joseph!
Yeah, it's the Holy Family within a heart. Y'all, that is 1 month. Woo!
About 6 years ago, I arrived home from work and my 5-year-old son was already holding up a baseball. We can play, but I don't have a lot of time, I warned him. All I could think of was my to-do list. I had a department meeting to plan, papers to grade, and small projects I had to finish. But as I slipped on the baseball glove, something changed. I forgot about my lists. We tossed the ball back and forth, back and forth. But then my son asked me something. Is there still time? Is there still time? I couldn't answer it. So that night, I broke up with busy. I quit committees. I limited projects. I set up a curfew for myself at work. I learned to give 110% on things that mattered and to give 11 or 12% on things that didn't. See, I had been drowning in a sea of busy, and yet I'd been wearing busy like a badge of honor, like I was winning some kind of imaginary competition. But life isn't a game, okay? It's actually technically a board game, and I think it might also be a cereal. But here's the thing, you don't get a trophy for packing your schedule with more projects and more accomplishments and more meetings. All you get is a bigger load of busy. But busy is hurried. Busy is overwhelmed. Busy is fast. Busy is careless. Busy is a hamster wheel that never ends. And a sprint up the ladder without ever asking where it leads. There are moments when life gets busy. I get that. But I never want busy to be the new normal. I never want to look back at life and say, wow, I was really good at being busy.
So yes, I love me some sappy videos all the time, at least at the beginning it was. But we could do the next slide. So I love this quote: "Do not sacrifice your soul on the altar of your work." And I say that it's Jason Everett and me. He doesn't know this yet, but I totally am a fangirl. But he actually said, "Do not sacrifice your marriage on the altar of your mission." And I changed it. So, we both said that. But yes, do not sacrifice your soul on the altar of your work. College, not to go all like good vibes, but like college is such an incredible time. I would hate for you guys to look back and say, yeah, kind of like the video, I was really good at being busy during those 4 years. Because the Lord has so much more in store than for you to be busy. And for us to just miss what he's trying to say. So, have you guys heard of Unbound? Yes. So good. So I went to Unbound. It's basically a deliverance ministry. There's many things that are tying us down that we don't even realize. So whether that's like trauma or past experiences or like always, bad beliefs, like just lies that we buy into. So I went to Unbound and it was incredible. It read my soul and it was so good. But it was so good to, like, for the first time acknowledge, like, why I was so stressed. As a missionary, I fell into the busy culture. I know, they're human too. We're human too. But yeah, like, that just blew my mind how, like, even in ministry, I could start worshiping busyness instead of worshiping the Lord. Or worshiping my ministry instead of worshiping my Lord. So I had them pray with me. And it was so cool because in the end, they go like, have you experienced anything? Or like, do you see anything right now? And many times images do come to mind in prayer, a lot of healing thoughts also. And for me, it was just blank. I thought about nothing for the first time in my life. And I was like, oh my goodness, is this what it's like to have an empty box? Like, I was so excited that I could finally think about nothing. And I remember being scared, like my eyes were closed and I'm like, I see nothing, I feel nothing, like there's just nothingness. And I remember Neil Lozano, he's the writer of the book and he was the one praying with me. And he said, yes, because finally you don't have to keep doing it anymore. And I was like, again. That was just such a beautiful moment. And of course, I have to like continually go back to that. I have awareness of it, and I know my inclinations. I'm not completely free of it. But it is good to know that I experienced so much freedom and that all the Lord wanted me to think about is nothing. Because he's like, yeah, you don't have to do anything to receive my love. So where does your self-reliance come from? And where did you learn to overcommit? Why is it hard for you to say no? Just wanted you guys to think about that for a little bit. Maybe share with the person next to you. Just why is this your inclination? You don't have to share your deepest, darkest secrets, but just in general. After the presentation. We need to be talking about this because we're all experiencing it. So on the left is one of my favorite pictures of the Holy Family. And it's after Mary gives birth. And I just love that gaze of Joseph gazing into the eyes of Mary. It's just so beautiful. And the first moment of adoration with Jesus in between. But just going back to I delight in you. And that's something that like we learn as counselors too. Like no matter what someone is sharing, like I delight in you and I'm honored to be in this moment with you. And I hope that that's every human interaction. Like, hey, I delight in you. in a not creepy way. But, so I love the fact that Jesus didn't even govern his childhood. I mean, yes, he governed, but like he allowed himself to be born and to be vulnerable and to be humble and to be led by parents. So even he abided in the Father's love in that moment, and that's something that we're also called to do. Like, we don't have to govern our college experience all the time. It's going back to like, Lord, like, what is it that you want out of these 4 years, and like, how do you want to transform me this week, this semester, today? I went to a conference on Monday, and it was super inspiring. I went to this conference titled Latinos, Tu Lengua, Tu Voz, Your Language, Your Voice, and it was handicapped Latinos and disabled Latinos in DC. And it was so cool because the conference was all in Spanish, which was amazing. They were so inspired by that. But we had interpreters because some people were deaf. And you would see how the interpreters would hear the Spanish, would translate it into ASL, and their ASL was in English. Like they understood it in the language of English. So it's this like whole trilingual thing that was super cool to watch. I was paying attention to the conference, but I was totally looking at the interpreter the whole time. And I just loved that gaze that they had. Like that individual who was deaf was just gazing into the eyes of the interpreter, and like they didn't look away like we always do. Like if you ever catch someone's eyes, you're just like feel exposed. Like it's literally their eyes. Like it's fine to gaze at each other, and we should be gazing at each other. And I was super inspired by the fact that that person had to gaze into the eyes of the other to understand. And that's what we need to do with the Lord. We have to be gazing at the Lord in the Eucharist and in prayer in order to understand why we're here, and in order to understand these crazy voices that are speaking to us that I don't understand most of the time. Like, why am I doing this? And why am I here? And why am I stressed? Like, oh, can you please interpret this for me? Oh, I'm yours? I'm your child? Okay, great. So yes, please gaze into each other's eyes. Like, that is such a gift. Look into each other. We're almost done. So in terms of the bathroom, I also, you didn't like that transition? Someone was really funny the other day and told me, like, I don't know if I can say this, I'm just gonna say it. So it told me, like, oh, the Lord just knew we needed to take breaks sometimes, which is why we need to go to the bathroom. Like, we just need to, like, take a seat and, like, rest. And I was like, you know what, there's so much truth in that, because my most powerful thoughts are usually in the shower. I hit my notes nicely in the shower too, acoustics. But like, why is that? And like, it's because we finally can't do anything else than what we're doing. So I think that's when we have our deep thoughts, because we're not distracted by all the other stuff, where we have to be human and connected with the Lord. So that was just my bathroom thought. That was a shower thought, but anyway. In the end, if you couldn't tell, this was a little bit of a self-care talk, but mostly I wanted to redirect that and talk about how we can let God take care of us, because it's not about like, oh, self-care, like you always hear that on college campuses, but we don't know how to take care of ourselves. Like we have to allow the Lord to. So these are just some ideas. When I wake up in the morning, I automatically reach out to my phone. And I started getting very annoyed at myself for doing that. So now I won't let myself grab my phone until I give Thanksgiving for having woken up. So I actually roll out of bed, and I land on my knees, and I just thank the Lord with a humble heart, as I try to be humble. Not always succeed, but just like thanking the Lord for the gift of the day. And I think that puts your whole day into perspective, to know that you didn't wake up on your own. You had to completely abide in Him. And He woke you up, so hashtag blessed. Number 2, to develop that prayer life, to do it daily, preferably in the morning. I saw how much I suffered when I was disconnected from the Lord, and I became a monster. Like, I didn't even want to be around myself. So please develop a prayer life, because you'll become more of you, and because you need the Lord, and the Lord desires for you to be with Him. Third, look into your personality. We talked about that last week a little bit, but whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, we want to be balanced, but something that I realized is that when I look for life-giving things, I remember as a missionary, my team director would say, like, don't spend time with students, like, just, like, spend some time with yourself, and then I realized, but I'm an extrovert. So then I was really sad just by myself. So there's a balance. I do need solitude and I do need silent prayer. But if I'm an extrovert and it's life-giving for me to be with people, then my life-giving thing should be with people. Like, let's go out to lunch, let's go play, let's go to the beach, let's do all the things. And if you're an introvert and you need time to yourself, beautiful. Do the thing and don't feel peer pressure to be an extrovert because you were created to be a beautiful introvert. And we need you to use that personality to glorify the Lord. That's why God gave it to you. So make sure you look into your personality when discovering, like, what should I do that is life-giving? And it shouldn't be just anyway, that is the Sabbath. So the Sabbath, please have a Sabbath. Sunday should be your Sabbath. I know some of us can't have Sunday as the complete Sabbath, so at least find a day that is just for the Lord. The Lord instilled the Sabbath to look at his work and delight in it. Like, how are we delighting in our week? You know, I wish that I had, this goes to the next point, I wish I had journaled during my mission work and during my time in CCM, because there's so much goodness that the Lord did that I don't even remember now. And like, I wish I had journaled, and I wish that I had been true to my Sabbath and like being able to reflect on the week and just delight in all that he did. Because if I'm just a robot, then like, I don't even notice his goodness. Lastly, accountability, community. Ask each other, hey, are you striving or are you abiding? Like, just have that heart check constantly. My coworkers are actually really good at being like, hey, are you getting your schoolwork done? Like, they're very good at being like, hey, are you being balanced? Because they care about my soul. So please, like, connect with each other and ask each other if you're abiding or striving. Your body talks to you. So I noticed I was stressed, and I didn't recognize it because I'm positive to a fault. Because my eyes started twitching like 2 days ago. And I was like, oh man, I'm stressed. So like, your body talks to you and we ignore it. Like, everyone's getting sick around this season, and that's not a coincidence. Like, your body's yelling like, SOS, like, give me sleep. So listen to your body, be in tune with your body. If you have any concerns with your mental health, actually everyone, please take care of your mental health. Come speak to me, come find a counselor. It's so beautiful to discover why it is that you're thinking the ways that you're thinking or the ways that you're struggling. It's not your fault. Our bodies are beautifully made and they cope for us to survive. Sometimes we cope incorrectly, so we just have to relearn that. So please seek help if you need it. And then lastly, spiritual direction. If it weren't for that man, Padre, I might not be here right now. You know, it's like crazy to think about. Like, you need that spiritual father or sister or lay person to smack you, to know you, and to be like, hey, you're kind of thinking crazy things right now. And I'm like, oh, I didn't even notice because I wasn't speaking about it. So it's good to speak that out. And I want to close with a little video. We'll see if it works. Has anyone seen The Greatest Showman? Yes, queen! It's one of the greatest movies of all time. It's all the way at the bottom. And I want you, I'm sure some of you guys have heard this song before, but I want you to think about it through the lens of God and how we're coming back to the Lord. And it's the sing-along version, because I just wanted you to see the lyrics.
I saw the sun begin to dim. Felt that winter wind cold.
Everyone better cry.
The man learns who was at fair. And the glitter fades, and the walls won't hold. 'Cause from that rubble, one remains. Can only be what's true. If all was lost, there's more I gained, 'cause it led me back to you.
I drink champagne with kings and queens of
politicians praise my name. The those were someone else's dreams, the pitfalls of the man I became. For years and years, I chased their cheers, the crazy speed of always needing more. But when I stop and see you here, I remember who all this was for. And from now on, these eyes will not be blinded by the lights. From now on, what's waiting till tomorrow starts tonight. It starts tonight.
You don't need to see that. So in the end, I just wanted to close off by saying that you're meant to grow. Your life is the only gospel some people will read. So please live as children and abide in the Lord. Thank you guys.